All right, welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Glad to be back.
This time, we're going to be looking at, well, something that I'm sure a lot of you are seeing in the headlines right now,
Right.
and that is um, some pretty major legal developments in a case against Donald Trump.
Yeah, definitely big news.
Yeah. So, full disclosure, we don't have all of the court documents or anything like that.
Right.
What we do have are some news excerpts, kind of summarizing what's been going on.
Yeah, definitely enough to get into some interesting discussion.
Yeah. So let's dive in, I guess. Basically, what's happened is that an appeals court has upheld a jury verdict
Right.
from a sexual abuse lawsuit against Trump. And I guess my first question for you is, like, what makes this such a big deal?
Well, I think what a lot of people are focusing on is the fact that this is all happening in a federal level,
Okay.
which, anytime you're talking about federal courts, that has the potential to set broader precedents.
Right.
And potentially have implications beyond just this particular case.
So to kind of back up a little bit, because like I said, we don't have all the details here, but this is stemming from a sexual abuse case.
Right.
I know the jury already ruled in favor of the accuser, so this isn't like a new verdict or anything. This is more like they've upheld it.
Exactly.
So can you just remind the listeners real quick, what were the core accusations in the original case?
Yeah, so and just to be clear, I don't think we need to go into too much detail here.
Right.
But essentially, the accuser, E. Jean Carroll, alleged that Trump had assaulted her in a department store dressing room
Okay.
back in the 90s.
Okay, and so the jury believed that in the original trial?
He did, yep.
Okay, and so now an appeals court is basically saying, yeah, we agree.
Exactly, yeah. They've reviewed the lower court's decision, and they haven't found any reason to overturn it.
Okay. Now, this is where I start to get a little lost in the weeds.
Yeah.
I understand, okay, appeals court upholding the original verdict, but why is that so significant?
So a couple of things. First of all, it just adds weight to the original verdict.
Okay.
It makes it much harder to overturn in the future.
Okay.
But I think what's really generating all the buzz, and what you alluded to earlier, is the potential ripple effects this could have.
Okay, so tell me more about that.
Well, like I said, this is a federal court decision. And federal courts, they often deal with broader constitutional questions.
Okay.
And their interpretations can apply nationwide.
Okay.
So this particular case, because it involves such a high-profile figure and because it deals with allegations of abuse of power,
Right.
it could become a sort of touchstone for future legal battles.
Okay, so in other words, if somebody else comes forward with similar accusations against, I don't know, another powerful figure, a politician, a celebrity.
Yeah, exactly. This case could be cited as precedent.
Wow. Okay.
And it could also, potentially lead to a closer examination of how legal systems handle these sorts of cases.
Yeah, I'm starting to see why this is causing such a stir. It's not just about this one verdict. It's about the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the practical ramifications. What does this mean for Trump?
Well, we need to be careful about speculation, right? This is just one piece of a very complex legal puzzle.
Right, of course.
But depending on how things play out, he could face further legal consequences.
Okay.
There's still the possibility of further appeals, but this ruling definitely makes things more difficult for him.
Okay. And I bet just from a non-legal perspective, I have to imagine this is going to have a pretty big impact on his reputation.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of the legal outcomes, a case like this inevitably takes a toll on someone's public image.
Right.
And especially in today's world where news travels so fast and people form opinions so quickly.
Right, yeah. So I think what's really striking me about this case is that it kind of transcends just the legal aspects. It touches on these broader themes of power dynamics, accountability, how we treat accusations, especially against powerful people.
Yeah, it really raises a lot of questions about our society as a whole.
Right. And I think, for our listeners, even if you're not deep into legal stuff,
Right.
these themes are so relevant to our everyday lives.
Absolutely. We all encounter power imbalances in different ways.
Right.
And this case really forces us to think about how those imbalances can affect how we treat each other, how we seek justice, how we hold people accountable.
So let's kind of wrap things up here.
Mhm.
Can we just recap like the key takeaways from what we've discussed?
Sure. So at its core, this is about a federal appeals court upholding a sexual abuse verdict against Donald Trump.
Right.
And that decision, it has potential implications that go way beyond this particular case.
Right.
It raises questions about legal precedents, about how we handle accusations against powerful people, about accountability, about power dynamics in society as a whole.
Yeah. It's a lot to unpack.
It is.
So as our listeners kind of go out into the world and continue following this case,
Right.
what are some things that you would encourage them to keep in mind?
Well, I think first and foremost, stay informed, keep up with the legal developments, but also pay attention to the broader conversations this case is sparking.
Right.
Think critically about the information you're consuming,
Uh,
and don't be afraid to engage in thoughtful discussion about these really important issues.
yeah. And I think it's also a good reminder that, even though this is a very specific case,
Yeah,
it's really a microcosm of a lot of the challenges that we face as a society.
absolutely.
So, yeah, think about the big picture.
Hmm.
How do legal processes, power dynamics, the quest for accountability, all these things, how do they play out in society as a whole?
Great questions.
Yeah. This case is definitely giving us a lot to think about. And with that, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And to all of our listeners out there, as always, thank you for joining us.
Until next time,
We'll see you next time for another deep dive.
keep learning,
Keep exploring,
keep questioning.
and we'll see you soon.